First story, the forgotten one. I didn't think much when we decided to explore the old Ashbrook building. Everyone in town had a story to tell about it, but none of them ever seemed real. They were just the usual ghost stories people tell to spice up a dull life. At least that's what I thought back then. It was a late summer afternoon when my friend Derek and I made the decision. The sun was hanging low, casting long shadows over the crumbling brickwork of the building. The place had been abandoned for years, and the stories surrounding it were nothing more than whispers among the older folks. They told tales of a man who once lived there, someone who had gone mad, a recluse who had disappeared without a trace. His name was Simon Roth, but no one knew exactly what had happened to him. The building stood in the outskirts of Ashbrook, a small town in southern Kentucky, forgotten by time. As we approached, the creaking of old wood and the smell of mold hit us like a wave. The windows were boarded up, but there were gaps just big enough for us to peer inside. The place seemed like it had been abandoned forever, but there was a strange chill that ran down my spine as I stepped closer. "Derek, you sure about this?" I asked, hesitation creeping into my voice. "Yeah, man, don't be such a coward," Derek replied, grinning. He was always the adventurous one. But something felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. We pushed open the rusted door, the screech echoing through the empty hallways. Dust and debris covered everything. The floors creaked under our weight. I felt like we were trespassing in a place that shouldn't be disturbed, but Derek was already a few steps ahead, calling back to me. "Come on, the real fun's in the basement. You scared?" I followed, my footsteps hesitant. The building seemed to grow darker as we ventured deeper, the air thick with the smell of decay. I couldn't explain it, but it felt like the walls were closing in on us. Then, we found the door to the basement. I had heard rumors about the basement. People said it was the place where Simon Roth had lost his mind, that something had happened down there, something no one was supposed to know. But curiosity got the better of me, and before I knew it, we were standing in front of the door. Derek was already trying to pry it open. "Let's see what's really down there," he said, a devilish grin on his face. I didn't want to, but I couldn't bring myself to back out now. We pushed the door open and it groaned loudly, revealing a dark, narrow staircase. The air grew colder as we descended, the faintest sound of scratching and scuttling echoing through the walls. I froze for a moment, feeling something wrong. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Derek laughed, but it didn't sound right. It wasn't his usual carefree chuckle. "It's nothing, man, you're just freaked out." But I wasn't. I felt like something was watching us. The deeper we went, the more oppressive the silence became. The scratching grew louder, almost frantic. Then we reached the bottom. The basement was unlike anything I had expected. It was filled with old furniture, rotting away in the corners. And then there was a strange smell. A pungent, metallic scent that burned my nostrils. It wasn't until I turned my flashlight towards the far corner that I saw it. A figure. It was a man, disheveled, his face covered in dirt and matted hair. He was sitting there, rocking back and forth, muttering to himself. His eyes, when they met mine, were wide and unblinking. I felt a chill run through me. There was something wrong about him. His gaze was empty, hollow. "Simon," Derek whispered, stepping closer to the man. That was the name I had heard in the stories, Simon Roth, the madman who lived here. But something about the way he looked at us, I felt like we had just stepped into something we couldn't escape. Suddenly, without warning, Simon lunged at Derek. I barely had time to react before Derek was on the ground, the man's hands around his throat, his teeth bared. I screamed, trying to pull Simon off, but his strength was unnatural, inhuman. It was like he was a different person, something more than a man. I managed to drag Derek free, but he wasn't moving. He was breathing heavily, his face pale. I didn't understand what had just happened, what had taken over Simon, but I knew we had to leave. We ran. I didn't look back as we fled up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, but when we reached the top, the door wouldn't open. The rusted lock had jammed. We were trapped. "Derek! Derek! Wake up!" I screamed, but he didn't respond. His body was cold. I realized with horror that something had happened to him down there. The next thing I remember, I was waking up outside. The sunlight was too bright, and I couldn't make sense of where I was. I was lying on the ground, my body sore and shaking. Derek was gone. I didn't remember how I got out, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay there anymore. The authorities found Derek's body the next day, just outside the building. It was a gruesome sight. His skin was torn, his eyes wide open in terror, and there were signs of chewing. I didn't know what had happened to him down there, but I knew one thing. Simon Roth was still in that building, waiting for his next victim. They say the place is cursed, and I believe it. I never went back. But sometimes in the dead of night, I hear scratching at my window. I don't think it's over. It's never over. The Forgotten One is still out there. Second story, The Forgotten Echoes. I always thought I was immune to fear. I had explored old, abandoned buildings all over the country, places people said were cursed, haunted, or just too dangerous to even think about. But none of that had ever bothered me. Until one night, I found the Hollowbrook Manor. It was late fall when I first heard about it. The locals in Hollowbrook, a small town tucked away in the hills of West Virginia, whispered about the old mansion. They told stories of disappearances, strange noises at night, and shadows moving in the windows. Most dismissed it as superstition, but my curiosity was piqued. What if those rumors were true? The thrill of discovering something others feared was too tempting. The manor was set on the edge of town, hidden among dense trees that seemed to swallow up the house like a beast that had claimed its prey. The place had been abandoned for decades, but the townspeople avoided it as if it still had a life of its own. No one ventured near, and everyone who tried had come back with some sort of strange tale. But not me. I was different. I was determined to uncover the truth. I arrived at the manor just after dusk. The sky was a murky gray, and the cold wind sent chills down my spine as I walked up the overgrown path leading to the front door. The place looked like a forgotten relic of another time, its once grand architecture now crumbling and decayed. The front door was ajar, as if inviting me in, and I couldn't resist. As I stepped inside, the smell hit me. Dust, rot, and something else. Something that made my skin crawl. The air felt heavy, thick with years of neglect. The floorboards creaked under my weight, echoing through the silent halls. I pulled out my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. The light flickered, as if the house didn't want to be seen. I moved deeper into the manor, my footsteps soft but deliberate. The further I went, the more the house seemed to close in around me. The walls groaned, the windows rattled with the wind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I turned a corner and froze. At the end of the hallway stood an old mirror, tarnished and cracked, and something else, someone else, stood in the reflection. I whipped around, but there was nothing behind me, just the empty hallway. My heart raced as I turned back to the mirror. The figure in the glass was now closer. A woman, pale and hollow-eyed, her lips moving as though she was whispering something. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The noise echoed through the manor, and the woman's whisper turned into a hiss. My breath hitched, and I instinctively ran, but the house seemed to stretch endlessly, the halls twisting and changing. No matter where I went, the woman's whispers followed me, growing louder and more frantic. I reached what I thought was the front door, but it opened into a long, narrow staircase that spiraled down into darkness. Something deep inside me screamed to turn back, but my feet were already moving. As I descended, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath. The walls felt slick, almost wet. At the bottom of the stairs, I found myself in a basement. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of something decayed. The room was filled with old furniture, broken mirrors, and what looked like old portraits, their faces scratched out. But there in the center of the room was a large, ornate door, untouched by time. I stepped forward, my hand reaching for the door handle. But before I could touch it, the whispering woman's voice filled my mind. Leave. Leave now, before it's too late. My pulse quickened as I turned the handle and pushed the door open. Behind it lay a room filled with dust and cobwebs, but what caught my eye was the large, full-length mirror standing in the corner. It was beautiful, too beautiful for a place like this. But as I approached it, my reflection was wrong. In the glass, I saw not just myself, but the woman from before, standing behind me. She smiled, her teeth sharp, her eyes wild. My body froze. I couldn't move. The reflection began to twist and contort, the woman's image morphing into something grotesque. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The mirror, It wasn't just a mirror, it was a doorway. The woman reached through, her hands grasping at my shoulders, pulling me closer. Her grip was ice cold, and the pressure was unbearable. I felt her nails digging into my skin, pulling me into the glass. I struggled, fighting with everything I had, but I was weakening. The last thing I saw before I was swallowed by the mirror was the woman's twisted face, her eyes wide with glee. Now I stand here, inside this mirror, watching as others come to visit the manor. I try to warn them, but my voice is trapped, lost in the endless echo of the house. If you ever find yourself in Hollowbrook, don't go near the manor. Don't listen to the whispers, because once you enter, you might never leave. And neither will I. Third story. Whispers beneath Hollow Creek Asylum. They say Hollow Creek Asylum was abandoned for a reason. I never believed in urban legends until the night I decided to find out the truth myself. My name's Ethan Carter, a freelance journalist from Denver, Colorado. I've chased stories across half the country, but none of them ever felt like this. None of them stared back. It was early October when I drove through the dense fog toward the outskirts of Ravenwood, a small forgotten town resting on the edge of the Rockies. Locals warned me about the place, their faces pale as they muttered about the asylum that had loomed over their town for decades like a curse. But warnings were fuel to me. I needed something big, something that would set my channel apart. So I went. The building stood like a decaying corpse, its broken windows grinning wide, the metal gates rusted and twisted. They said it was shut down in 1974 after a fire, but no one knew how it started. Some believed it was never a fire. Some said patients vanished long before that night, dragged into the earth itself. I parked, grabbed my flashlight and camera, and stepped through the gate. The cold was unnatural, a suffocating chill that pressed against my skin. My boots crunched on gravel, each step echoing louder than it should have. Above me, the asylum loomed, and as I stared up, I could have sworn I saw a face in one of the windows. A pale blur. Watching. Inside, it smelled of mildew and rot. Graffiti lined the crumbling walls, but some of it wasn't spray paint. It was older, carved deep into the plaster. "We're still here." My breath caught as I read it. The flashlight flickered. I pushed forward. I wandered through endless hallways, each turn leading me deeper. Old wheelchairs rusted in corners, patient records littered the floor, and the walls seemed to breathe. My camera caught whispers, faint and hollow, but when I played the audio back, it was silent. The main records room drew me in. Files were scattered like someone had searched for something, desperately. I picked one up. Patient 971, Madison Clark. Committed for hallucinations and violent tendencies. The note said she disappeared 3 days before the fire. Scribbled on the bottom of the page, almost childlike, were the words, "She still hears them." A crash sounded above me. I froze. My mind screamed to leave, but my feet dragged me up the stairs. The second floor was worse. The air was thicker, the walls stained dark. My flashlight caught movement, a door creaking open at the end of the hall. I swear I heard giggling. Childish, high-pitched, wrong. Room 206. That's where I found it. The bed was still made, as if waiting. Scratches gouged deep into the floor, the words repeating over and over, "Let me out." And then I saw her, just a glimpse in the corner of my eye. A girl, long dark hair, white hospital gown, stained with something darker. She smiled. I blinked, and she was gone. The door slammed shut behind me. Panic clawed at my throat. I grabbed the knob. It wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me. My flashlight died. In the darkness, hands touched me. Cold, thin fingers grazing my skin. I screamed until my throat was raw, but no sound seemed loud enough. When I woke, I was outside. Dawn was breaking. My camera lay beside me, cracked, the footage gone. I staggered to my car and drove until Ravenwood disappeared in my rearview mirror. Weeks passed, but the dreams didn't stop. I saw her every night, Madison, smiling, whispering, telling me secrets that didn't belong in this world. I thought I escaped, but something followed me. Yesterday, I found new scratches on my apartment wall. The same words, "Let me out." I don't sleep anymore. I don't eat. Sometimes I catch my reflection smiling when I'm not. She's here, with me, watching, waiting. If you're reading this, don't go to Hollow Creek Asylum. Don't chase the whispers. You might find them. Or worse, they might find you.